Hello and welcome to the Addicts podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today is episode 66, and we're going to be interviewing Drew E. How are you doing today, Drew?
I'm doing well. How's it going today?
I'm doing well also. So let's just dive in here and tell me a little bit about yourself growing up and things that happened to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in almost what you want to call a normal home. I had a mom and I had a dad. They were married, had marital problems just like anybody else. I'd like to think of it grew up pretty normally. No major problems or major trauma. Unbeknownst to myself when I was growing up, between the ages probably of 5 and 13 or 14, I didn't know that my dad was a recovering alcoholic. He had been sober for quite some time, probably from the time I was like 2 years old. And it wasn't until, when I was a teenager that I noticed that he had been drinking beer. I was like, oh, I didn't know you drank beer or anything like that. And he kind of just played it off. And it wasn't until, until I was 14, 15, and I realized like, oh, I think this is a potential problem.
Did
And
your
then,
mom say anything? Was your mom? What was your
no,
mom
it was
saying
it was
about all
never
this?
really brought up. My mom was well aware that my dad had problems, and there was probably a lot of infighting, behind the scenes and things like that, behind what he was doing. But it wasn't until I want to say in 7th or 8th grade, where he went to rehab went away for about a month, came back, was sober for maybe a year, and then by the time I was in my mid-teens, he had been drinking again.
At
And,
the time he went to rehab, you said you were in eighth grade.
something like that.
At that point, did you know what rehab was, or was it like daddy's sick, or how'd they tell you?
It was just I knew it was a way he had to go somewhere just to get better. I mean, I was old enough to at least understand what an alcoholic was, not necessarily everything that it does to you, but hey, I can't control, what I'm doing and my behaviors and stuff like that when I'm drinking and stuff. He also gambled a lot, but I had no idea that was really an issue. I had always just been more focused on, his trouble with alcohol and stuff like that. And whenever, he was drinking, he pretty lax in his parental responsibilities, which I never really held against him. It took a long time for me to realize that he was making a lot of poor decisions. And I always felt like I was kind of like one of the only people on his side, where my siblings were, not so forgiving. And it was such a weird thing because both my parents died when I was 18 years old. And I think about it now, and it's a horrible thing to think sometimes, but if my father was still alive, I think there would have been eventually a lot of resentment. Because you never know, people can change and things like that. But I would imagine he'd probably still be drinking today. And if I had that extra 15 years of, becoming an adult, seeing what he's doing, maybe letting me down time and time again, there could be resentment there. But it's something I'll never know, right? So the things I remember about, specifically my dad, are generally good things. He had problems, he had demons, but at the end of the day, he was a good guy, and he wanted to do what was best, but he couldn't overcome that all the time.
Gotcha. And you said your siblings were not as forgiving. How were they reacting to all this?
They just disappointed all the time, and my sister's 4 years older than me. My brother's a couple years younger than me, and they would always just be annoyed with him and always say, why is dad messing up all the time? I was like, he's not messing up. He's, I always gave him the benefit of the doubt for no reason in particular. I don't know why. I think about it now, and I was always like, maybe because like we had a pretty good bond, over sports and things like that. He loved watching me play basketball. We loved going to games, doing stuff all the time. So I would try to focus on the good things that were happening all the time, not necessarily the bad things. And I would kind of just, whenever he did something that was, messed up, and I would know it was messed up, I would just kind of sweep it under the rug and I don't know why that is. It's just, I just wanted him, wanted my dad to be my dad, have him be my friend, things like that. And I thought that was the best way to handle the situation.
So your siblings were not as forgiving. Did you ever think that maybe it was because they were older and they understood more than you, and you were kind of, I guess, naive to the situation because you were so much younger, or you just think they
It's
reacted
definitely
differently?
possible. I mean, my sister was 4 years older than me. My brother's actually younger, but he didn't have a great relationship. Like they were always kind of butting heads. My brother was always more so the rebellious type, so he always had to kind of be dealt with in one way or another if he was getting in trouble in school or sneaking out or doing something or whatnot. So he was always butting heads with my dad, and my sister was She had 4 years on me, so understanding, when she is 18, I'm 14, not really understanding, that my dad's making lots of poor decisions. So she would look at it that way. It's like, hey, I'm practically an adult here, and I know all these things you're doing are really bad, and it's affecting us. Why are you doing this? And I just couldn't really grasp that.
How did you do in school and also social situations?
School is fine. I was always a relatively good student. Nothing. I was a little lazy in high school, but I got by. I went to college after my parents passed. I did well enough once I realized, I was paying for credits. I had to, otherwise I'm just throwing money away. So I always did well there. I was always a little shy. Social situations were a little challenging for me, especially once I got a little older into my early 20s. I would kind of just want to withdraw and not unless it was my super close friends, and I have like three or four, really good buddies. Really struggle with meeting new people. And when I had to, just a lot of awkwardness, a lot of being quiet, not making conversation, and just kind of being the guy just hung out in the corner when I had to be out in those situations, and just try to avoid as much contact as possible.
Do you think that being so, I guess it can be a sense of insecurity. Do you think that ever led to you using drugs and alcohol?
Um, I think so, because I had dated somebody through high school, through college, ended up getting married to them. And what ended up happening was I almost used it as a crutch. And then I was like, hey, look, I have you, you're my rock. We live together, we do all these good things. And at some point I just decided that, that was good enough. And I didn't have to, put myself in situations where I could meet people and socialize. And ultimately I would let my girlfriend, fiance, and then wife do all of those things, go out, and I would never want to do that. And when I was dragged out to do it, I would be miserable. And not only was I miserable, I would, make the people around me miserable because I was being so weird about it. And it finally got to the point of, when I do that enough and I want to have so much solitude and not go out, for me, it wasn't drugs or alcohol. I turned around one day and I said, hey, there's this cool thing. I can gamble online. I can do this, I can do that. And I found this thing that I could do for hours upon hours by myself, past time. And it was something that gave me like a sense of purpose. It made me feel safe and secure, even though, ultimately something that was really innocent at first, and then turns into something that I'm doing for hours upon hours, blowing money away, making really poor decisions on a daily basis, swearing I'll never do it again, and then the next day I go and do it again.
I'm
It was just,
smiling 'cause I know all about that.
I agree. Um, it's just awful, just making one bad decision after another, and then knowing, hey, I should really stop, and saying, well, I don't really want to stop, or I kind of want to stop, but I don't know how to stop, and I can't stop, so I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm so far in, I just want to keep going. I might as well keep going, because there's no point of turning around at this point, because I'm not going to make it any better by stopping.
When was the first time you ever used?
Um, I mean, again, it wasn't a drugs or alcohol thing, but I started gambling compulsively like through, what is it, 2022, like 3 or 4 years ago.
So your main addiction's gambling.
Yes. Um, wasn't I could have easily turned to the alcohol or drugs or something like that, but for whatever reason, it was gambling, and I don't know why that was. I think had I turned the other way, it could have been something else. But gambling for me just became an escape. I could sit in front of the computer for 20 hours a day, or 10 hours, and just blink, and then it'd be over. I would play in softball leagues, and I would just skip games just because I was, on a binge of just playing and playing and playing and winning and losing and trying to catch up, and just trying to fix all of this crazy stuff. And it was just absolutely unreal. Then not being, staying up all night, being tired, and not being able to sleep because I'm worrying about all the money that I've lost, and saying my wife's going to kill me when she figures out that I've done this, and I can't tell her that. I'm just going to have to figure out how to get it all back. That was that was the hard part.
And then a lot of times I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, I shouldn't assume that you go back and think you're going to win all your money back.
Oh yeah, at some point, I
Like, it's just one more bet. This time I'll win.
this time I'll win because I've lost 19 hands in a row or 19 spins in a row, so I'm due for a hot streak. Reds come out 20 times in a row, so the 21st, black's due to come out. It has to, it's the law of averages. And no matter how many times I would try to win, I can't win because even when I won, it wouldn't be enough. I could win, $1 million and, you know, I would want to win 2 million or 10 million. For gamblers, it doesn't, money is irrelevant because it doesn't matter if you make $10,000 a year or $100,000 a year or $1 million a year, because whatever you can get your hands on is what you're going to gamble with. So, when someone comes in, I go to lots of GA rooms, and GA doesn't, encourage talking about how much you've lost because your thousand could be 10,000 to somebody else. You're just gonna gamble away what you can get your hands on, or what you can steal, or what you can borrow from people, or what you make it work, right? So like the money itself is irrelevant. It's just it doesn't matter. Everybody's the same because for whatever reason it's something that we do that we can't stop. And I like for me, I gambled. Initially people gamble was like, oh, I want to play. It's kind of fun. I can win some money or something like that. But eventually it just became a coping mechanism for me because I never realized how I was supposed to communicate with people and how I was supposed to talk with people and talk, especially when things weren't going well, saying, hey, I'm feeling down right now, or I'm feeling sad or mad right now. Like for me, I always pretended to be this happy go lucky guy where everything was perfect all the time. And everything was always chipper. And that's just not realistic. Life is great, but life can stink too. You can have bad days, you can have good days. And, you're going to get a mix of those all the time. You might get 10 bad days in a row. But ultimately, it's like how we cope with life on life's terms in deciding, what I'm going to do to better myself. So for me, it's in the yellow book for Gamblers Anonymous. There's a question saying, "Hey, is it important to know why we gambled?" And it's the answer is a little unclear, but for me, I think it's inherently important because if I know why I wanted to gamble in the first place, then I know what I need to work on with myself in general. Because in the 12 steps, there's only one that's actually about gambling. The rest, 2 through 12, are about making character changes in your life to live a better life and ultimately not want to do something self-destructive to begin with. Because if I don't do that, not only am I going to gamble, but I could do something else that's destructive. I could, start doing drugs and not being able to stop doing. I mean, I'm thoroughly convinced if I did any sort of drug, I would be hooked right away because I have that kind of personality. So ultimately, it's just like character changes, trying to make the right decision each day. And by the grace of God, I've put together 2.5 years of recovery, and I thank I thank my higher power every day that I'm here. There was a point where I didn't want to live anymore because I didn't want to know how to get out of what I was doing. I had to lose everything to gain everything. I lost my house. I went through a divorce, and those are all things that I caused. Those are things that are my fault that I have to live with. And on one hand, I'm like, man, that's a big bummer that that happened to me, and I'm not happy that that happened. But the other hand, it sounds kind of weird, and it's kind of hard for people to understand. Like I am happy that happened because it brought me here, and I'm a better person today. So if I had to go through all that to be the version of myself that I enjoy looking at in the mirror each day, then that's good. Um, that's who I want to be. And so if I can wake up today and try to do something better than I did yesterday, great. And I fail all the time. Like tomorrow I might wake up and make bad decisions and not be a good person, but try to be cognizant of that and try to be better the next day. It's progress. You can't be perfect, so don't try to be perfect. Just try to be better than you were yesterday. That's like the only advice that I can give to people is just try to do something a little bit better than you did yesterday.
It's great. So what does gambling feel like? What's like the actual feeling as far as, what you're thinking at the time? I mean, maybe it's a physical feeling, like a pleasure or something. What's the feeling of gambling that you're chasing?
Um, I mean, and I know there's some like scientific studies around this, but like a lot of people when they make for me it was like when I would put a bet on the table and I was playing something or spinning a wheel, and once it started spinning and it was in the unknown, like it almost felt like an endorphin rush, and I'd have this, I don't know if I want to call it a high, but just like a rush of excitement and good feelings of not knowing what was going to happen. So like having that action in there just gave me this feeling of being all powerful and not knowing whether I was going to win or lose that was better than actually when I won. Like when I won, it felt kind of exciting, but then I would have to do it again to get that feeling of excitement. And then doing it, similar to a drug addict or something where you have to do more of a certain drug to get a high. Like I would have to bet more amounts of money to get that feeling of excitement of like, oh man, I bet this much
Really?
amount of money. I gotta do more because I'm not, I can't bet $1 a hand anymore because that doesn't do anything for me. I got to bet X amount of dollars a hand until, it gets to the point where it's something ridiculous. So each time was just a little more. And it's crazy because what they tell me is, hey, if you decide to go back out there, you're not going to go and play $1 hand. You're going to go back to whatever you were playing before you stopped because that's the only thing that's going to do it for you. And you're just going to wreck yourself again 10 times quicker than you did last time. So that's why I don't want to do that.
Interesting. So how long in total have you been, where were you addicted? What age was it again? I think you said around 18.
No, so I really didn't I didn't start gambling. I didn't gamble compulsively that long. It was 'cause I'm 33 now, and like I gambled a decent amount, but I didn't really start doing it where it was a big problem until I was about 30, so 4 years ago. Like I would go to Atlantic City and stuff, and I would go blow X amount of dollars, and I'd be like, oh, no big deal. I'm not going to come back for 6 months, right? For me, it was when the accessibility came in with online casinos and the legality of that and online sports books and being able to do everything with a few clicks of a button through a phone was when I had that accessibility to be able to do it over and over again without having to go anywhere. I don't have to leave my house. That was where it was dangerous. And especially when I was feeling crappy and I had bad vibes going on in my life and I was making poor decisions, which just pushed me towards making bets and things like that. So it was a few years ago, and then it was a year and a half, 2 years where I had serious issue, and then you know October, something October 1st when I think I came clean, my wife told us what's going on. I got to a GA meeting on October 7th. I think I gambled the next day, and then for whatever reason October 9th of 2019, I made my final bet, and I had so many people tell me that I was going to fail because the program is full of failures as far as like a retention rate. And I just at first I took it hard. I said, screw everybody. I'm just not going to gamble because you're telling me I can't not. It didn't have anything to do with recovery or anything about bettering myself. And that's how it was for the first 6 months. Just don't gamble. That's all I have to do is not gamble. And by going into rooms and listening over and over again, hearing these stories of how people were happy is like, I slowly came to the realization, like I have to actually change something. I can't just not gamble. I could be a jerk off that doesn't gamble the rest of my life, but I don't want to be that. I want to be, someone that people enjoy being around or someone that can help other people. So about 6 months in, started looking at the steps and saying, hey, what are these little changes that I can make in my life to make me a better person? Because if I can be a better person, then I'm not even going to have thoughts of doing anything that are self-destructive.
You say you started doing the steps. What was your first impression of the steps when you first read them?
This isn't for me, and I think a lot of people feel that way in recovery.
Yeah, I
It's like,
did.
this is a lot of work. Why would I do this? I just need to not drink or not do drugs or not gamble or whatever. That's the only thing I have to do, which is, completely backwards.
Yeah, I remember a lot of the God stuff turned me off. Which is, it's not to say I don't believe in God. It's just to say I didn't know at the time how desperate I actually was to get better. You know what I mean? But then eventually, like you said, once you realize you need to get better, you kind of take a second look at them and they mean something different.
No, absolutely. It's so funny when you start taking things in so much differently because in GA we have what they call the yellow book, and it's about 17 pages of the principles and guidelines of the program. And I remember reading it saying, all right, I don't like this, I don't like this, this sounds okay, I'll do that, I won't do this, I won't do this. And everybody that I talked to said, if you do things your own way and then just don't follow the principles of the program, you're going to end up two ways. A, you're going to end up relapsing, or B, you're just going to be a jerk that doesn't gamble. And both are pretty terrible. I've met plenty of people in the program. The guy who has 40 years, but I think, in my personal opinion, I just don't think he's a good person. I think he has 40 years of abstinence and zero recovery. I don't want that. I want recovery all the way. I just want, I want to be able to be able to look in the mirror and say, I enjoy waking up every day. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy sharing my story. I'm not ashamed of who I am. And it's funny because I would never be the kind of guy who would talk about anything. And now I'll tell a homeless guy on the street, it's like, hey, guess what? I'm in recovery. And I always get a kick out of it because I have, just like anybody else, I have friends who aren't, because they don't have a problem. And it's hard for them to grasp it sometimes. And sometimes when I go off on these tangents talking about recovery and what I do, not that they're rolling their eyes at me, but it's like, oh, he's doing that thing again where he's talking about his feelings, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to respond to this. And
Yeah.
that's okay. And I feel so thankful to be able to do that. I've had discussions with, my superiors at work about that. I had somebody who came back into our line of business at my job who I hadn't seen in 2 years. They said, hey, what's been going on the last 3 years? And I think I said nothing about work. I think I just talked about me and what was going on in my life, and I blew their mind in a good way. And I said, it's not what I was expecting to hear, but it's really great to hear that, you're able to talk about those things. I'm past the point of being ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I love who I am. I try to be the best version of myself every day. And if I can share my story and help anybody along the way, even if it's only one person every so now and then that's all that matters. We need more people to be able to share that message of recovery and saying, hey, things can get better. If you put in the work, if you completely surrender that you're powerless over whatever your addiction is, you can get better, and you can have, a life that you always wanted to have every day. And it's an amazing thing to be able to experience. And I wish everybody could. I wish that everybody that I saw came into a room, because, I get it. People come into rooms, they might see him that day, and you might never see him again. And they're like, this isn't for me. These are a bunch of weirdos. I'm not ready to commit yet. But, if you can get that message to one person, whereas, someone was able to get it to me for whatever reason, I don't know why I'm one of the lucky ones. It's a miracle. Anybody who's in recovery and practicing that is a testament to that.
Yeah, I actually never heard of the Yellow Book. Is there anything that you learned specifically from there that you think you should share? Anything that stood out to you?
It's really, I think the biggest thing is there's in some of the books, and there's some like worksheet books, and they talk about character defects. It's like, and then there's like a list of like 50, and there could be hundreds, but when you take a look at character, whether it's like, lying, or bigotry, or anger or resentment, um, taking a look at all those words and realizing, how much of it that you either relate to or realized you used to relate to. Those are the things for me, realizing like, I thought I was this nice guy. I'm really not. So I have all these horrible things that I do like on a daily basis, right? And it's impossible to cure all those things, right? We're human at the end of the day. We make mistakes every day, and sometimes we're mean spirited. But if we can be aware of the things that we can improve on, like for me, like character defects is like one of the biggest things that I try to push on people, is being aware of those and how to fix them.
So how strong are you in your recovery? Do you think if you were in a position where people were going out to the casino for a weekend, you think you'd be able to spend a weekend there without gambling, or it'd be too tempting?
Um, do I think I could go and not gamble? Sure, but I would be miserable. Um, so it's still, the Yellow Book talks about not putting yourself in certain situations, and knowing, like for me, like I wasn't really a big sports player. I was a casino guy, so there's really no reason for me to ever go to a casino, even if I wasn't going to gamble. There's nothing for me to do there, and if I just go there, I'm just going to be miserable because I'm going to kind of have the heebie-jeebies and stuff like that. So, the book tells, says, hey, don't test or tempt yourself, right? So there's really no point for me to do that. I mean, I don't need to be conceited in a way saying, oh, I feel confident I wouldn't gamble. I guess I do, but I don't. There's no point. Like I don't have to go hang out with friends who are gonna go out and do something like that. And the best part is when you're in the program, you tend to drift away from people who are going to drag you down anyway. Like I had a couple of like gambling buddies who do that all the time. I don't really talk to them anymore. Not because I tried not to. It's just because they know I'm in recovery, so they know I'm not going to go gamble with them. So we don't have that much in common anymore. I've got plenty of friends who gamble, not a lot, just might do a football pool here and there, and they're respectful and don't talk about that stuff. And that's okay too. But it's like at the same time, it's like being aware is like, what's the best for my recovery? Going to Atlantic City and going to a casino or going to Las Vegas? Like, absolutely not. I'll give you a good example. Like, my brother lives out in Colorado. He says, "Hey, do you want to go to this wrestling event in Las Vegas?" I said, "I don't think I should be going to Las Vegas." And he goes, "Oh, don't worry. I'll make sure you're good." I said, "It has nothing to do with me being good. It's but me being in a better state of mind. Me walking around the strip in Las Vegas is not going to put me in a good state of mind. Am I going to gamble? I don't think so. But why would I even put myself in that position to be miserable?"
No, it's absolutely true. So friends and family, how were they during this whole thing?
Um, you know, my brother's supportive. I don't think he really understands. My sister's kind of similar. I take most of my support through the rooms that I go to. I have a really great sponsor. I go to a couple meetings a week and have really good chats with people. Ultimately, most of my support is coming from people within the program. Not to say that I don't have friends who are supportive of me, but when someone doesn't fully understand the powerfulness and grasp that addiction can have on you, you can get all the support in the world from them. But when you can't sometimes have that conversation with somebody, like I have like my neighbor who lives next to me is an AA, and I can't tell you I don't even know when it came up, and we somehow found out like, oh, you're in AA, oh, you're in GA. It just completely blew the doors off of what our conversations were about, and then now we talk about recovery all the time, and it might be something silly, or they might have a bad day, and we might just have a chat, or get tacos and get pizza and just talk about life on life's terms. So people in the program are most helpful for me. My sponsor has given me some of the best advice I could ever get, and what he tells me is get comfortable being uncomfortable. Do the opposite of what you think. If you
I
don't
heard
want
that
to
from an
do,
old timer in a rehab.
yeah, it's like you don't want to go to a meeting, go to a meeting. You don't want to go to the gym, go to the gym. You don't like talking to people, talk to people. And it's amazing because now, like, I'm not perfect, but I'm still a little bit introverted, and sometimes like I don't necessarily want to, be super social, but making progress in that department and being able to help people, it has been paramount. And what's amazing is I'm 2.5 years into this, and I'm 33 years old, so I'm a young guy, but we get really young people in the program all the time because just the accessibility of gambling. This 23-year-old kid has come and gone a couple of times, and he asked me to be their sponsor, and I remember saying, "Why?" I said, "What have I done to deserve to be somebody's sponsor? Like, what wisdom could I give you?" And I guess that's not really for me to decide. I'm just trying to wear my recovery on my sleeve and say, hey, it can get better. And if somebody feels that I can help them, I'll do my best to try to. I think it's the best way to give back because I've gotten so many things from my sponsor. When I picked my sponsor, I had two or three people I was thinking about. And I remember the guy that I picked was the one I liked the least. And that's why I went with them. I thought he's the kind of guy who'll give you a hard time when you really deserve it. And if you do something that's not right, he's going to tell you. And those are the things I need. I need somebody that's going to be on my case and just tell it like it is and not be like, oh, no, everything's okay. You'll do better next time. Like, no, do better now. Like, your recovery depends on it. You need to make right decisions each day. Not to say that they're mean or anything like that, but just having, that level set. It's like, hey, I'm going to hear what I need to hear, not what I want to hear is perfect for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So I know you said he gave you some great advice as far as be comfortable or get comfortable being uncomfortable. Is there any other advice you would give to people that are listening or watching?
Um, take it slow, right? At least, for myself, we dig ourselves a hole over a long period of time. And then when we finally want to try to help ourselves, we want to fix everything at once. I remember thinking, it's like, I owe all this money to people. I have to pay it back. I have to do this. I have to get out of debt. I have to take on 3 jobs to do all that. And the biggest thing that was given to me is like, hey, take it slow. You didn't create this problem overnight, and you're not going to fix it overnight either. It's going to be slow. And my sponsor also told me, goes, I wish you a slow and painful recovery because you need a stark reminder every day of how you got here in the first place. That's why GA is against bailouts. If somebody gave me X amount of dollars for me to get out of debt, what did I learn? I learned nothing out of it, obviously. I could just go back and make the same mistakes again. But if I, slowly paying back what I owe and making amends slowly, then it's a reminder that hey, this is what can happen, and this is how you get better. So being patient, I think those are the two words I would say: be patient.
Yeah, I know you said that it was never your thing. One of my last questions is, why do you think you chose gambling over, like, other substance abuse? Was there anything that led you in that direction, or was it just, I don't know. That's what I'm asking you.
It's a great question. I found it exciting. I there was just something about it. Just maybe it was that prospect of hitting it big or hitting a jackpot or winning money, because initially that's what it's all about, is money. um Having this fantasy land, it's like, I'm going to win all this money and go on these vacations and buy things for people. I think that's what it was, rather than drinking myself to death or trying to get like a new high with drugs or something. But I truly believe it really could have been one of those things, but I just happened to gravitate towards gambling first, and sometimes I really don't know why that is. I just happened to. And it's silly because I feel like I should have seen it coming, because when I go to AC, I blow a lot of money, or I'd be the kind of guy, I go play like a scratch off ticket. If I won $5, I'd go buy another one, and then won $20, I'd go buy five more, and then by the end of the week, I would buy like 20, and then I would finally take a step back, like, okay, calm down. But it wasn't until that online stuff I just couldn't stop for whatever reason, and it's hard for me to explain that to people, because a lot of people's like, hey, I get it. Drugs you can get physically addicted to, so you need it. But it's like, why can't you just stop gambling? I said, it's similar but different, and it's hard to explain. And I'm not sure why I gravitated towards it, but for whatever reason, that was me.
All right. I think that's a good place to wrap it up, unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, I think that's it. My only, advice for people is, if you're in trouble, ask for help. Someone can point you in the right direction, and call an 800 number, talk to a friend, talk to anybody. Holding these things in can be dangerous, and the best thing you can do is just raise your hand and say, hey, I have a problem, or I need help.
Absolutely. That's another great piece of advice. So for everyone that's listening and watching, go below, give us a like, also subscribe so you can see when we upload new podcasts. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram. Go to the Facebook group and click on the events tab, and you'll see the information for our daily Zoom meetings. Hope to see you there. And for today, that's all I got. Until next time.